Hi, this is Nina. Welcome to NV Fine Art Studio. Today I would like to talk about how to paint light. Because watercolor is a transparent medium, many get stuck on how to paint light. The answer is, in order to paint light, you have to paint dark. And this brings us to tonal values. Light is a tonal value and dark is a tonal value. So basically, tonal value is a term we use to describe darkness or lightness. I describe it as an opportunity to find light and to lose edges. If we talk about grayscale values, they vary from white to black and usually have 10 steps. But it doesn't mean that tonal values apply only to monochrome. Every color has a tonal value. This is a color wheel that has a grayscale value strip. It shows all the 10 steps. If you want to get one, I would suggest a dedicated grayscale tool. It usually has little holes for comparison and it is much easier to use. This tool helps with identifying and comparing values. The biggest issue is that there are many beginner artists who confuse values with colors. For example, one might think cadmium yellow is a light value and ultramarine blue is dark value. Cadmium yellow is a color. It is a color that has a narrow value range. It is impossible to get value 10, the darkest dark, from cadmium yellow. Ultramarine blue is a color as well. It has a much wider value range, I'd say from 1 to almost 10. There is another issue. Even knowing about the existence of value in color, many people have a difficult time trying to see what value that is. If you paint from a photo, you can try to turn it into grayscale, but quite often it isn't useful. Another method is squinting your eyes. This method works much better as it eliminates all the unnecessary little things, and you just see the big darks and light shapes. Squinting your eyes, seeing big shapes, and recording it on your paper with just 1 or 2 values is called value study. Let me show you on an example of how I do one to assist me with achieving a painting that is full of light and depth. This painting is available as a full-time demonstration on my Patreon as part of Masterclass tier. I give a very detailed explanation of what I do and why, the entire thought process. Also, Masterclass tier allows you to communicate with me and be part of private Facebook group. First of all, it is important to divide the values into 3 categories: light between 1 and 4, middle between 4 and 7, and dark 8 to 10. In traditional watercolor, we start painting from light, then do middle values, and at last the darks. But the hardest part is to identify what belongs to where. To do so, I would highly recommend doing a value study. If you're a beginner, do not skip this step. First of all, it is not natural for us to see one big shape without any details. And secondly, we commonly see color instead of value. For example, we see a white object in a shadow and paint it white, where usually it is middle value gray. Without clear understanding values, you won't be able to make a good painting, especially painting light and painting depth successfully. Let me show you an example of how to do a value study. And when I say do a value study, I mean how I identify middle and dark values to successfully paint the light. Here is the photo for my painting. Let's begin with a sketch for the value study. Just to let you know, even when I do my sketch, I try to generalize and simplify. I only mark shapes and details that are necessary for this type of atmosphere. This is a sunny day, so I will need quite a few, but definitely not every window and every architectural feature. The sketch is done. The white paper will represent the light value. This is an example of the light value wash. The first wash on the painting. This is when we get rid of the white of the paper. The white paper on the value study will represent this on the painting. When you finished with the light value wash on your paper, it's time to identify and paint the middle value shape on your value study. But before I do this, just let me show you how middle values look on the painting. In reality, this is where your painting actually begins. So every time when you start painting your middle values, you have to be 100% sure what you are doing. So this is why the value study is so important. It tells you what to do. But doing value study is trickier than you think. To do it successfully, you need to tackle two big issues. First, you need to identify the values in real life correctly. Secondly, you have to interpret them to tell a story. To identify, we need to look at the photograph with our eyes half shut. We need to eliminate all the details and see the big middle and dark value shapes. The second step is interpretation. This is where most of the students get trapped. For example, if the asphalt road under the sun appears to be in the same value as the shadow on the building, you still need to paint it as light value and ignore the reality. It is highlighted by the sun, and we need to convey this message. Let's do the middle value shape on the value study. I premix a big puddle of approximately value 6. I'm starting from the right hand side here, but most commonly I start from the left and slowly connecting things as I paint them. I'm progressing to the left. Just a reminder again, as this is crucial. Always connect the middle values. When you paint them, think about composition. The middle values in conjunction with the darks will emphasize the light and will dictate the dynamics of your painting. Add and remove things if you think the final result will be better with or without them. For example, I have added cars and people as it looked too empty. I've made the left-hand side building taller. I have also added a shadow to that building and to the road in the foreground to tell the story of glowing light in a better setting. Okay, this is the finished middle value. This is the plan. Now I need to follow it very closely on our painting. Otherwise, we did all this work for nothing. And this is quite often a mistake I see. People make a value study and do not follow it. In terms of following, you do not need to follow how you painted, where you start and when you finished. But the shape and the connections need to stay true to the value study. If you have a plan, stick to it. Colors often trick students, and they tend to forget about values when paint in colors. If you get confused with colors and values, have a grayscale tool handy. When you make your puddles, cross-reference it with the value on the tool. Does it look like value 5? No, too weak or too dark. Let's add a bit more pigment or let's add a bit of water. When you make your mix before painting, do a test on a separate piece of paper. If you suddenly realize it is an incorrect value, don't continue painting. Go back to your palette, adjust the value, and then go on. Also remember, the biggest problem with watercolor is that it dries lighter than we paint. I noticed with Saunders Waterford, it can be up to 2 steps lighter, especially if you paint with warm colors like raw sienna and yellow ochre. So definitely allow for that. So this is a progression of my middle values. And as you can see, I still follow the plan. Another thing to remember is that middle value is not just value 6 all over. It varies from 4 to 7, from almost light value to almost dark value. So when you do your painting, you have to do your observation where to apply lighter middle value and where darker. For example, I did lighter windows on the left-hand side building closer to the sky and darker windows closer to the middle ground. This is to emphasize the focal point, to create maximum contrast around the focal point and create the sense of glow and bright light. Another thing, you need to think if you want to add your darks wet into wet. If so, you have to do it at your second wash, middle value wash. This is why I usually don't separate the second and third washes. The one is usually a continuation of the other. Also, don't forget to have a full range of values from 1 to 10, and it is best if your value 1 is against the 10, around the focal point. Here it is, the middle value against the value study. The last thing that I usually do is add final touches with the darkest darks, lightest lights, and the bright colors. And the painting is finished. Hope this was informative. Hope it answers some of your questions. If you like this video, please hit that like button, subscribe, share, and leave a comment. This is it for today. Until my next video, bye.